Okay, so I've gone through and done some pretty basic projections, just like the front. Um, I've done side projections for either side, same technique, just to get full coverage. I've specifically left this top piece unmapped because I'm going to go right now into how to get this mapped on. Because if we go into body paint, we can see that, we can see that this is kind of a curved edge and it's a bit of a more organic um, side to the model. And I want to kind of go into that because so far from basic side projections, back projections, bottom, front, we can get some really nice coverage. Obviously, if we tumble around, we can see that there are a bunch of seams on along all the edges, which is okay. We are going to clean that up soon. Um, but with a few, this took me about half an hour. So with a little bit of time, we can get some really nice coverage all over this model. That's going to set us up later on. So yeah, so right now let's project this top piece first. And go to top view, zoom in, and go to make sure I create a new layer. So what I've done was every time for this portion of it, um, I'm happy with all my textures in Photoshop. So I saved out um, this PSD into a TIFF, and I ended up because before I had a bunch of layers for each of the projections. For instance, I had, you know, 3 or 4 different layers with all the projections that I did from top, bottom, side, front, back. Um, but I'm going to, what I did was I went into the material editor, if you double click on the shader ball, and I've just loaded that TIFF that has everything in one map, so it's all nice and clean. And I know for right now this is what I want. I don't need any extra layers. I want this all kind of flattened down into a master color, base color right here. So this is what I've done. Let me delete these. And so now I want to project the top. And so in order to make sure that I'm preserving what I have without baking everything down prematurely, I'm going to create a new layer on top of my master color. Um, and then freeze my camera at 4K. And then prepare it for painting. Same method. Go into your paint layer, under Layers tab, Texture, Save As, Photoshop. Let's do top view. Let's go back into Photoshop. Let's open up the top view. If I can find it. Oh, there we go. And what's nice about body paint is that it automatically loads in this layer here. Which, oh, hold on, let me redo this projection here. Put this on shaded so we can see the form. And freeze it again. Prepare it for painting. Save as. PSD. Top view, just save over it. And then reopen it. So what I was saying, so you have this shaded view. It's nice so you can see where it slopes in the forms, but in terms of painting, we can't see the true flat color. So what body paint does, which is really nice, is it provides you a true flat color layer. So when you're painting, you can seam up this side of the color map and make sure that when it projects, it's all hunky-dory and blended in perfectly. And then you can toggle this on and off to see the form, give you a better idea. So for right now, let's open up our reference. find our top view. There we go. And let's project this. Just going to select the whole thing because it's nice one big panel. Paste it on in. So I didn't go over this before, the way I'm transforming things. If I hit Control T, shortcut for transform, and if you just go here, you can transform it without clicking on any buttons. You just drag it. It's going to transform at basically any kind of scale you want, which I don't want. I want everything to be uniform. So what I do is I go to Shift and Alt and drag this in, and it's going to scale down from the center of this pivot, which is what I like to do. And if I hold Shift down and go outside this box, you see this rotate arrow, and if you hold Shift, it does these incremental rotates, which is nice, so you can get a perfectly vertical rotation. If you don't do that, if you don't hold Shift, you can freewheel it, and it's not as accurate. So I like to hold Shift to make sure that's nice and accurate there. Shift Alt, drag this in, and let's just fit this to the model. Nudge this forward. So yeah, here we go. Now I'm happy with this. It's nice and flush to the edges. Go to a layer mask, hit B, make sure I'm on black, and for this I'm gonna go to a soft brush. Make sure pen pressure is on for opacity jitter. Slowly start blending this out. If you've gone too far and you're like, oops, I blended too much, if you just hit X, it reverses you to white paintbrush and you can reveal back. It's a very powerful tool, this layer mask here. So I want to just kind of get this in the ballpark. Blend that out. And this edge is matching up pretty nicely, actually, which is good. But this one here isn't, which I'm not going to worry about right now, because if I take this off, I can see that this slopes down here, and because this slope isn't flush to camera, we're going to see a little bit of stretching on these edges, which is okay. And I will further clean up in Photoshop. But for right now, I'm happy with this projection here. And I'm going to save this. Go back into Body Paint, right click, merge, top view. And there it is. So let's unfreeze. And then get out of mode, go into perspective. And right now you can see, as I explained before, we're going to get all this stretching here, which is okay. Because the purpose of that projection was to get this nice clean top, which we did. And I'm very, very happy with it. So let's clean the rest of this stretching up in Photoshop. So let's texture, save as. Save this into here. Open it up. And here's our top layer. So let's take this and drag it into our master PSD, which is right here. And voila. What I ended up doing was when I was projecting all this stuff, I realized that we don't need to save this. I realized that everything was coming out a bit too saturated for my liking, so I just put a hue saturation adjustment on top, and I made sure that my my adjustment layer for this guy is underneath that. So now we're going to do the same process as before, same technique. Add a layer mask, get a brush. I'm going to quickly paint out all the stuff that I know is stretching. It's nice and rough. And I'm going to bring back some of this. But I'm seeing now that this is right here is pretty much a threshold of where it stretches, and I don't want. So we have a bit of a dilemma where this is matching up, but we're going to fix that very quickly. And let's bring some of this back. And also, I'm not liking this here, so it's a bit too saturated, so I'm going to go back in my quick layer mask and just quickly take some of this down to match that edge a bit better. I'm baking this into this later because I know it's something that I want to keep, and I don't need an adjustment because eventually it's kind of it's going to be an executive decision eventually, because if you have too many adjustment layers, your PSD starts getting very, very big very, very quickly. So you want to be conscientious of what layers you want to keep as layers and adjustments, and what ones you can flatten down and not worry about later. And this is one I don't really need to worry about, so I'm just going to bake it into this map. Control D to deselect. And I'm going to go to, try to balance this out better, go to this map here, and try to bring up those darks so that blends a bit better before we continue painting. So I am happy with that. So I'm going to save this out. Just overwrite the original. Go back in here, right, double click on the shader and search for my textures. And it's asking me if I want to create a copy, and I don't. It's just going to take up more space than I need. And this will apply my new map. So here it is. And yeah, I'm happy with this, except of course this area here, which I'm going to paint right now. And there's a couple ways I can go about doing this. I can set my camera up, just kind of rotate it forward and project some texture here so it blends better. Or I can go into Photoshop and stay in Photoshop, and because I know my UVs are all uniform and what I see here in terms of scale is going to translate perfectly to my model in body paint, I can actually skip that projection step and just try to stitch together some of the existing image to help blend this a bit better, which is sometimes faster and more accurate, because you're dealing with just a 2D flat plane, and it eliminates um, the issue of projecting from an awkward angle and getting more stretching um, from your textures, which you'll eventually have to just paint out anyway. So I already know that this is working for me on all these textures. I just need this area here to clean up, which I'm going to do right now in Photoshop and disregard another projection. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to take a piece of pretty even gold stripping and I'm going to turn off this hue saturation layer just for a second so I can fix the base color map. I'm going to hit Shift Control C, Control V, and that gives me a strip from that area. And I'm going to go in here and just try to retrofit it in. And I'm just going to start erasing some of this area and blend it better. And I'm going to save this and see how this looks on my model. For me, I have a lot of I go back and forth a lot from Photoshop to body paint. I'm going to just reload this image just to see how things are mapping onto my model. And right now, what I just did, I realized that even though my UVs are uniform, there's a bit of a bowing that I don't see on this map. But if I open up my UVs, you can kind of see that this line isn't perfectly flush. And so what's happening is I'm getting this bow in this stripe, which I don't want. And so what I'm going to do, which is quick and easy, is knowing how this bows in body paint, I'm going to try to compensate by warping it. Just a tad. See if that helps compensate. It's a bit better, but it's not 100%. So what I'm going to do now is I want to reproject. I'm happy with the line up here, up top, but now I'm going to go and just do a quick projection from the front. Get rid of that. Create a new layer so I can paint on that layer. Save as. Photoshop. Just give it a name. clean this up. Now, I'm going to decide to take my front image I already have it here. I'm going to snag this area and see if we can resolve this issue here. I like that much better. However, I've realized that I chose this piece here that's kind of overlapping. So I want to take that back and choose a different piece. Pretty much what I was doing before, of just more even segment. And retrofit this in. Get to the fit a bit better. Slowly start taking some of this out. So blends. I like that detail here that I want to preserve. So now it's subtle, but it's working better for me. I'm gonna go a little bit further. Try to get that to line up a bit better. So when you're painting, there's a lot of noodling and a lot of back and forth that you're going to find that you're going to do, which is okay. It's part of the job. So you just need to systematically go through and make sure you have all this set. And I'm happy with that. In fact, I'm going to quickly try to put it on this side, because this is a detail I don't think is going to show up as a repeating pattern. And this way I can get a quick fit. Which works quite nicely. Blend some of this out. It's not a hard edge. And I want to bring some of this up because it's a bit dark. Just to balance better on this side. And that's working a lot better. So let's save that. And bring it back on in. So here we go. So this is much better, and I'm much happier with these lines. So I want to make sure I put this back into my master PSD. I just want to fold this on in. That's interesting. I guess that got flattened down. That's okay though. So there we can see that we get a much better blend on this side. I think what happened was I didn't actually copy over this side of the image. But you'll run into that, and I'm gonna improvise. And because I know this curve here is working, I'm gonna bring it on over to the other side. Just fit this in. And then clean some of these edges up real quick. So, I'm happy with that. Let's save this. And reload the image. So there we go. That is exactly what I want. So we have those lines lined up. Now our next task is to clean up this area here, which is going to be pretty easy. So what I'm going to do is currently I'm just looking around for patches of texture that I can possibly reuse to patch up this area, because right now the texture detail is and the way the leather is, it's kind of it's very different from front to top. So I want to find a pretty neutral piece of leather that I could snag, and I'm going to just take a shot in the dark and grab this area here, copy it, drag it on over, and this is going to work for me. So what I'm going to do is just quickly rough in this area. And then I can see right now this is a bit dark, so I'm going to go to my quick mask and quickly bring this up and hit the saturation while I'm at it. And I'm happier with that. And I'm going to just start fading this back. So now we're getting a much better blend from these two sides. And just gonna go back here, take these sides out, and just repatch these just with a similar texture. Blend it. So you see I'm doing a lot of my work in Photoshop, which is where you're going to spend most of your time. So getting used to a lot of the shortcuts and a lot of the tools will really help you in the long run. So I'm happy with this for now. And I'm going to reload this. That doesn't seem to reload. Let's try to save this again. Okay, let's try to seem to be loading. Let's try to save out a new image. Select that one. There we go. So this is something I'm happy with. And so that for this section, this is just to show you how to problem solve some areas that may not be too straightforward with organic curves and stuff like that. And so for the next chapter, I'm going to go into cleaning up seams and getting the color maps completed. So we can move on to the spec, reflection, bump, and displacement maps.